Opportunities abound in the land of the offended. Hello, everyone. My name is Persohn. You can contact me at pastor@mascot.church or in the comments below if you're interested. Hey, if you like these videos, like, share, and subscribe. I think today's video will really be good to share with young people, and I'll try to keep it as light as I possibly can, and you'll see that there are opportunities that abound if you're able to understand how to navigate the land of the easily offended. So, hey, if you're a little younger and you're watching this, take some advice from an old guy, eh? How about that? Now, I talked about like, share, subscribe. Yes, I did. You'll notice my camera light is going to change because I'm using partially natural light. It's going to refocus a bit, and so that's just the way that it works. Well, what is it to take offense, and what's that all about? Offense, ladies and gentlemen, is taken, it's not given. You might be in a situation where someone says something they may not even intend to offend you. Hey, listen, even if they do intend to offend you, the impact of that on you has to do with whether you take that offense or not. I often use this. Let me put this up on the screen here and just have to navigate my laptop. Things are a little bit more cluttered than normal on my desk because of my notes this morning. The taking of offense is a super effective spiritual activity that works every time. People say, well, Al, you're a pastor. Give me a spiritual activity that I know works every time, that I can just completely rely on, that is always functional. Yeah, I'll give you one. Taking offense. Taking offense. Now, let me just put this very important phrase on the screen here. Offense is taken, not given. May I say that again, please? Offense is taken, not given. This is really the core of the issue. We need to realize that we live in a land where personal responsibility is considered bad, where other people are supposed to constantly look after and care for us and mollycoddle us and provide that sort of environment for us. Folks, it doesn't work that way. Life is tough. You need to determine that you will deal with your own beasts on the inside and choose whether or not to do things like take offense. And of course, we live in a culture where it is just so easy not only to be offended, but to live in an offense culture. I guess I kind of double said that, but you understand what I'm saying. If you say the wrong thing, you can be called an ist or a phobe. Keyboard warriors can come after you and call you the worst kinds of people just to basically stop you or silence you or whatever. We live in that land. Now, the problem is that the taking of offense darkens the soul immediately. Do you ever notice that? You ever notice that once you are around an offended person, their appearance changes, their whole environment around them changes? The scripture says that the root of bitterness actually defiles many, which is interesting. Offense, bitterness, unforgiveness, anger, all these things are part of the same package, okay? Don't try to say, well, I wasn't offended, but I was angry. Or I wasn't, just grow up, okay? And you know what I'm talking about. And ultimately, the person who is perpetually offended is in a place where their soul can be darkened even for life. It can be extremely difficult to shake that. And it's possible to be even to get to the place where you're addicted and dependent on offense. And that's a hard journey to shake. Now, I'm not talking about something that's easy for everyone to deal with. Some people have no problem unloading themselves from offense. Others find it extremely difficult to do. Nevertheless, we need to understand that we are all weak in one way or another. We're complex beings. One person may not struggle so much with offense, but may have an addiction in the chemical area or an addiction in the mind or some other weakness. And there are people who don't seem to have too many weaknesses or addictions or whatever. I admire them. I think, wow, I wish I was wired that way. I'm not. I'm constantly on guard against those things that rot my soul all the time. And maybe that has helped me to produce a message like this. You are not alone. If you're not being preached at from someone who is in an ivory tower. I'm as weak as the next person, probably weaker than you are. Nevertheless, the taking of offense is a critical and dangerous thing that we must guard against. If you are easily offended, constantly offendable, you may need to really just work at it. If you're not, you're a little more casual, Well, you also know, do not take offense. Don't do it. Offense is taken, not given. And yeah. Now, the Bible does say some things about offense. I'll put two passages from the book of Proverbs up. There's a lot of biblical reference to this topic. It's very interesting looking at the relationship that preachers had with their audiences. The people were offended at his message, or they were offended at this doctrine, or they were offended. It's very, very common. You can actually just do a Bible Gateway search for the word offended against the New King James or the ESV or the King James Bible, and you'll just see how often it appears. And really, it's the kind of thing that you can hear. You say, yeah, that's the kind of thing that I understand. It's not hard to understand. The interesting thing about this topic, ladies and gentlemen, is that it's so simple, yet so deadly. Isn't that curious? We often want to get involved in esoteric things, kind of things that are out there that are more complex or more ethereal or more whatever. And, it'd be great to know those. And it is important to know those things. But the things that trip us up are the simple, deadly things that we just think we don't understand are bad or whatever. I think you know what I'm talking about. I have never met someone who has fallen into a terrible darkness because they did not understand some nuance of the teachings of Ezekiel the prophet. I haven't. Now, those are important teachings, by the way. I love the prophets. I haven't. But I've met a large number of people in my 40 plus years in the pulpit as a pastor who have fallen and gotten into trouble because of something like offense, or something like stealing, or something like lying, something that they've held in their soul and never dealt with. So let's take a quick look at some passages from the book of Proverbs here. Just quite simply, Proverbs 18:19 in the English Standard Version. A brother offended is more unyielding than a strong city, and quarreling is like the bars of a castle. Isn't that interesting? And you see this strong city motif? Let's go on to another passage from the book of Proverbs that says, a man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. Can you get a sense of what the writer is trying to tell you? Now, these are two different passages from different locations in the book of Proverbs, but you kind of get the idea. Now, on the opposite side to offense, of course, is walking in love and dealing carefully and examining yourself and so on. So, we're not talking about something that is impossible to beat. I think most people, once they realize the danger of taking offense, want to deal with it very, very quickly. Now, what we have in our society today, let me pop this up on the screen here, is no longer a great expression of emotion like you'd get in plays and classical music and well-written novels and so on. Instead, we have the expression of great emotion. And it's like that expression of great emotion is something that is rewarded and is something that is encouraged, and you're called brave and stunning if you grab onto offense and scream and shout about it. When offense gets settled in people's lives, it actually can become a virtue. It can become a strength. No, I'm sorry. They can perceive it as a virtue and as a strength. And of course, then what they have to do is signal that virtue to others. Have you heard the phrase virtue signaling? Isn't that curious? Haven't I done a good job of bringing the whole offense thing into the virtue signaling world? Sometimes I say things like that and I say, wow, man, I'm not being paid enough for this. That's a really brilliant thing. But you can see where we're going with this. I'm offended. Now I've got to tell the people of my offense and whatever. Or I'm standing with some offended party and I've got to do that. And I've got to signal my support for them. It's called virtue signaling. And of course, it reached its peak last year. It's declining now slowly, and it's about to be fully in decline. You watch it happening. So if you are struggling with offense, if there is a problem with it, here are some tips for you before we get on to our opportunities. You need to understand it is a sin that is highly destructive, and it is something you need to take to God in prayer. You might need counseling. You might need a friend to say, I'm just too easily offended, and this is a big problem, and I see it as a weakness in my life. Some people they don't have offense as really at the core of their being. It's maybe supplemental to their being, so it's quite easy to deal with. But if this is at the core of your being, if all of your life you've been able to deal with things by getting offended and screaming and shouting and so on and getting attention, that's really, really, really hard to break. And you have my sympathy. This is a tough tough journey. Now you say, well, every time I get offended and scream, people give me what I want. Yeah, not because you're beautiful, not because you're charming, not because you're desirable, but just to shut you up. Sorry, folks. Are you offended at my message? There's a thing in media called the tune-out time, the TOT, and it's measured when people turn a video off. I might I might have hit the tune-out time moment right here, but hey, listen, it's just the way that it is. If you struggle with offense, if this is a challenge for you, it is something that needs to be considered prayerfully. It needs to be considered with an open and an honest heart, and it needs to be considered with and dealt with some intent. Now, this is the same thing that I would say to somebody who struggled with an addiction of a chemical thing or whatever. And folks, you need to just take a moment to understand, I'm not preaching at you. I'm the weakest person in this audience here. I'm weaker than any of the people that care to take time to listen to me, including those in my church. I know what it's like to stand toe-to-toe with those fundamental human weaknesses. It's very, very difficult. It's an ongoing challenge, okay? So if you struggle with offense, you need to make it priority. Take some advice from me. Priority to deal with that in your life. Now, the offense culture took hold, of course, because of political correctness. Remember political correctness? Oh, you can't say that. You might offend him, you might offend her, or whatever. And that we saw that begin to creep into the limelight in the late 70s. By the time it was, we're in the 80s, it was there. It was everything. Several other things contributed to the offense culture that we live in today. Of course, single-parent families didn't help, where you had children large numbers of the children were neglected, and in the school system, mothers worked, fathers worked. There was that sort of disconnect. That was a big contributor. You had the sexual revolution was a contributor. And so on. We have the perfect seedbed for all of this happening for a world of offense. Another thing that took place that I think is much stronger, and it has had more effect on the offense culture than a lot of people know about or consider, is the self-esteem culture or self-esteem teaching. Oh, we need to talk about self-esteem. You tell the children around you that they can accomplish anything. There's a school in, I think it is the city of New York, ghetto school. And the kids get off the buses and they have mirrors in the halls that the kids see. And the children are told to stand in front of a mirror. I don't know if this is still going on. Stand in front of a mirror because over the mirror it says, you are looking at the most important person in the world. Now imagine that. Imagine telling a child continually that they are the most important person in the world. Wow. That's what the self-esteem culture kind of contributed to. So now you get this. You have single-parent families. You've got children being told they're important, and more important than anybody else, by the way. You've got the sexual revolution. You've got all of this. You have a society that's moved away from the Ten Commandments, moved away from the doctrine of love, moved away from the Golden Rule. You just have the perfect scenario. You have what we have today. So you have an entitlement culture that exists out there. This sense of, I deserve something. Oh, I deserve. And remember we talked about that in the past. Somebody said, well, that person didn't deserve to die this way. Well, by what standard? I deserve a better life. Who says? By what standard? Who says that we even deserve to have a functioning body or two functioning eyes or any? Think about that. Who says what you deserve or what you don't? And that's really interesting in this whole element, this whole environment that we're now talking about. As part of this thing that goes on and went on in the schools, and we have it in our own society, we tell our children things like, you can be anything you want. Hang on. You can be anything you want. How many schools are there? Let's say 10,000. There's a lot more than that. Let's say there's 10,000 schools. And in 10,000 schools, we've continually told our children they can be anything they want. How many boys do you think, how many girls do you think in those schools want to be astronauts? Oh, great. I can tell you there's going to be one in every classroom. Probably at least 4 or 5 in every school. There aren't enough astronaut jobs. No, you can't be everything that you want. It's absolutely impossible to be, well, absolutely impossible. Not quite, but it's ridiculous to be telling our children they can be anything they want to be, anyone they want to be. Folks, I could never, no matter how hard I worked at it, I could never be a champion sprinter. I don't have the body. I might have been able to be a champion middle distance runner, but probably not. I don't have the genetics. Don't have the body to be a bodybuilder or a weightlifter or anything. Just don't. I could not be one. I don't think I have the wiring to have been a nuclear physicist. Maybe, I'm not sure. No. But you see, we're telling our children, you can be anything you want, you can have anything you want. Now, when that doesn't happen, what do you get? You get an aggrieved, disappointed, easily offended child blaming the world because they've never really learned to work hard. Now, of course, this you can have everything you want has some application. I probably could be a champion shot putter. You say, well, no, you don't have the build. If I live to 85 and I join the Masters Games, I think I could compete as a shot putter if I'm healthy still and maybe get a medal, maybe get a world medal. Who knows? I watched the Masters shot putting, and this was of course the women's division. I think she was in her 80s. She had the shot put in her hand, walks up to the edge and plops the shot put over, and it just basically falls. Well, she's the only one competing, gets a medal. I might be able to get there, but quite frankly, as a teenager, you don't think about saying, I want to be a champion shot putter by the time I'm 95. You know what I'm talking about, all right? Now, of course, this culture then has produced a stream of grifters. What's a grifter? Somebody who takes advantage of a scenario simply to make money. You've got independent grifters. You have, and you know what, you've seen them. You know what they're like. You've got the offense grifters. Offended because this group of people is treated badly and that group of people is treated badly, and you got the people who pile on and make money. You've seen it. It's constantly there. But not only do we have these low-grade grifters, we've got high-grade grifters, people taking advantage of the offense industry. Who? People like big pharma, people like huge businesses. If I know how to capitalize on this, I know there's money in it. We need to understand that the offense industry today really exists because people thought there was money in it. There isn't as much as what you think, but it's still part of that engine. The other advantage of the offense industry being pushed and being promoted is that it divides societies and makes societies easy to govern. You look at this people group and you're suspicious. You look at that one and you're suspicious. You say, well, I'm easily offended, therefore. And then you have laws that have to be made and things just start grinding and grinding and grinding. But through all of this, ladies and gentlemen, I believe there are opportunities, especially if you're younger. So there are streams of grifters. Now, the other problem that we have in our society today is that those people who were taught self-esteem, you can have anything you want, you're special, you're whatever, you know that message? Where are those people today? That first generation of those who were taught it, they are, let me look at this list here, I wrote it down. They are our police. They are our politicians, our bankers, yes, our journalists, and even worse, our teachers. Think about that. Just think. This same group of people, the people who are making public policy, the people who are driving our culture and pushing forward, and of course our entertainers and a lot of our sports stars, are those who've been told this whole lie that, hey, you can do anything you want. You can have anything you want. You can be anybody that you want. And they're part of this entitled culture that exists out there. We're just, we're kind of bumping along the bottom. But there are opportunities. There are opportunities to do good things, okay? In fact, I think there's exceptional opportunities. Let me just grab my little notes here. Hey, you might even get a second video today where I talk about my Zettelcast and stuff. We talked about it last week. We'll see what form I'm in after I've done this one. Now, imagine that you are young. I am not anymore. I am 64. But imagine that you are, and if you're younger, think carefully about this. The kind of easily offended, easily aggrieved people that we're familiar with do not make good employees. And they're not the kind of people that businesses want to employ, and usually they don't do very well in the longer journey of life. Why? Offense darkens the soul. Think about it. Now think if you turned up to work with a resume that had, just let's say you're a young person, young-ish person, right? Maybe 19, and you're looking at what could be a plum job. And on your resume, it says something like this. Think carefully, ladies and gentlemen. It's got your schooling, it's got your other stuff. Personal interests. And let's say that you said something like self-taught Mandarin speaker. I'm just pulling this out of the air. I thought about it this morning on my run as a perfect example. Now you don't have Mandarin people in your background. You've never been, but you know that this is the biggest country in the world population-wise just to our north. And so you decided on your own, before you were even 18, to teach yourself to speak Mandarin. Wow. Imagine that sits on your resume. What's your prospective employer going to think about you? My, this kid's a self-starter. Amazing. Didn't spend all sorts of time on social media complaining and getting offended. I think you know where I'm going with this. I'm giving you good advice, ladies and gentlemen. Or maybe it says on your resume, I can calculate the square root of any number on paper. It's almost impossible for most people to do. By the way, I can't do it. And I realize it's a bit stupid that I can't because I learned it. I've forgotten. But you should be able to take any number and be able to calculate the square root of that number on paper. There's a formula for that. Don't know why I can't anymore, but maybe the calculator has spoiled me. Something to that regard. By the time you're 19, you turn up and you're, or maybe whatever, if you're able to do that, you on your resume it says, I've got my driver's license, motorcycle license, getting a bus license. You can't probably always get that by the time you're 19. I don't know. But your employer looks and says, this person has worked hard to compete with who? Themselves. To be better than the person they were. To be somebody that I want to have in my world. What if that same resume said something like, I am extremely loyal, highly dedicated to my employer, very reliable, and I never complain about anything. Now, of course, if you're going to make that statement, you have to live there. You've got to do that. What am I saying? I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, that in this day of perpetual offense, those who do not take offense, those who learn to deal with the beast inside, those who learn to work hard and to accomplish great things are the people that will succeed. If you're younger and you're getting this, hopefully I'm sowing a seed here. Hopefully you're saying, you know, I could be right. The problem that we're seeing is that now, by the way, this isn't happening. This is going to slow down, so you better get yourself into gear. The problem that we've seen, though, and we're still seeing to a large degree, is that the majority of the world is wallowing in offense. Think if you don't wallow in offense. Think where it will take you. Think where you could go. Are there opportunities? Yes. Are there opportunities in the land of the offended? I think there may be more opportunities for the hardworking, for those who take charge, for those who deal with the beast on the inside, more opportunities in the land of the offended for them. Let me see if I have got all of my notes covered here today. Kind of an interesting conversation, isn't it? Kind of an interesting topic. We're talking about the fact that offense as a thing is profoundly dangerous, even though it is something that our culture accepts as normal and as almost good. Our culture almost rewards it. Have you ever been in one of those environments where everything seems to be smooth and everything seems to be working fine until that offended person starts to speak up, or until that offended person arrives? You know what damage that does to the environment. Don't be part of that. Ladies and gentlemen, offense is taken, it is not given. Someone might attempt to offend you. The choice becomes yours. Do you choose to take it, or do you choose to guard yourself, protect your heart, deal with the situation, move on, and realize that opportunities abound in the land of the offended? My name is Persohn. I hope this message blessed you today. Let me know if you want to hear more on this topic. God bless. We will talk soon.